Another year has gone by since that $62 million increase. What's the cost per year of this building that hasn't housed anyone yet?
Okay, what's the next big question the city still needs to answer? Welcome back to a Stocktonia Sit-Down. In our first video, we showed how Stockton's new city hall costs exploded under the 10% rule. Now, we're looking ahead. What happens next and what it means for Stockton's future. Okay, so let's talk about accountability and what's next. Did the city staff or contractors respond to your questions about why costs grew?
For all of those groups, so the City of Stockton and the three main contracting companies whose agreements with the city we looked at, we sent out lists of questions, so very comprehensive questions about our findings and what the story would say ahead of when the story published, because that's really important for fairness and accountability when you're reporting. And so from the city side, we did not receive responses to our questions. Again, some individual council members responded, but the city itself did not answer that sort of comprehensive list of questions. From the contractor's side, one contractor responded just to direct us back to the city and say, hey, you want to know anything further about this, you need to speak with the city of Stockton about it. And the other two did not respond to our questions.
What are experts like engineers and professors saying about whether this much spending is reasonable?
The experts that we spoke with indicated that the proportion of increases on the contracts relative to the original contracts, if you take the project as a whole, so the three main contracts as a whole, seemed high. So the overall increases on the project came to about more than 30% of the original contract prices. And for the biggest one, so the construction contract, the growth just on that one was nearly a third. So they indicated that kind of stuck out to them. But again, that's not to speak to specifically whether the increases were justified or not. But what we do know is that those increases didn't undergo a uniform level of scrutiny and oversight by the council and the public.
Okay, what's the next big question the city still needs to answer?
Having clarified and informed folks about how this policy works, I think, you could raise accountability questions about, hey, what other contracts might have grown under this current system? That's not to say that we should or shouldn't have this system, but it's a question you could ask. Another question might be, hey, we see all these increases on new City Hall that really grew through this policy. How many of those increases were, were justified? Asking that question about whether any maybe didn't need to happen in the way they did. A main takeaway from our findings in this investigation is something that all cities and all governments and all constituents, grapple with, which is when you work in government and you work for the people, you need to find a balance between transparency and oversight and getting the work done, right? Because in a lot of ways, it would be unrealistic and not serve the public if a $1 increase on a contract always had to come before the city council, and then we discuss it and then the public hears it. But you could say, hey, the public also isn't best served if it's way on the other side of the spectrum, where large amounts of spending don't go before the city council before it's approved, don't get seen by the public in any way before it's approved. And so finding that balance of oversight and transparency and letting the public have their rightful part in that process versus getting things done and serving the public in an efficient, effective manner is the balance that this story gets at. And so I think asking ourselves, what is the most responsible way to give Stocktonians that, which is their right? It's their city government. And I think that's kind of what this story really gets at.
If you could sum up your reporting, what's one thing that you would want the public to take away from this story?
I think it's important to understand that we're pretty deep in this project at this point. So at every point throughout the 2 decades that Stockton has been trying to move City Hall, there's been questions and scrutiny, and like, we're deep in it now. You know, we bought the building, and we've spent this money to renovate the buildings, and it's pretty far along, all things considered. And so, you know, you could arguably say that it would be beyond what's realistic to say, like, stop the project, or, you know, and I think city officials truly do want to get this done to better serve members of the public. But what I think this project represents, though, is a really good opportunity to understand a policy and a practice that applies to a lot of other contracts and projects as far as we can tell. So even though New City Hall is kind of the biggest, you know, most scrutinized example where we're throwing this spending on top of already scrutinized past spending and past deals, I think it's important to realize that, hey, this is an opportunity for us to learn more about and think more about our spending oversight on contracts in general at the city.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Well, that is our Stocktonia Sit-Down. Huge thank you to Aaron Leathley for reporting on this matter.
Thank you so much.
If you would like to read the full report, it is on stocktonia.org. And thank you so much for viewing and your support in local journalism that helps keep Stockton accountable. Thank you so much.